Okay, this is a brief tutorial on how to read music. This is the treble clef. You can look at clefs, including the treble clef, the bass clef, the alto clef, as like legend on a map. They tell you how to read these 5 lines, also known as the staff. So the 5 lines are called the staff. In the treble clef, which is the one I'm going to teach today, the 5 lines from bottom to top are E, G, B, D, and F. Take a second and memorize that right now. A good way to remember it is every good band deserves fans. There are other little ways to remember it, but that's the one that works best for me. Every good band deserves fans. Take a second and memorize that right now. Pause the video and then pick up right after. Great. So now that you have that memorized, let's look at the spaces. So the spaces between the lines. F, A, C, and E. Simply spells face from the bottom to the top. So when those are mapped together like that, where you're seeing both the lines and the spaces, it starts to show a pattern. And the pattern, if you look at where it's starting from A, you'll start to see the alphabet form there. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Remember that in music, we don't use the letter H or above. So you can go ahead and erase the letter H from your mind for now. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then we'll start again at A if we go higher than G. And if we go lower than A, it'll be G from the octave below. So that's exactly what happens right here. E, F, G, and then we start again at A. We don't go on to H, we start at A. A, B, C, D, E, F. There'd be a G higher than that and an A above that. So this is going to help us to not fall into one of the biggest traps that we can fall into when we memorize what the lines and the spaces are within the staff, is thinking that that same pattern continues outside of the staff. We don't, for example, with spaces, we don't say F-A-C-E and then the next space above is another F. It's not. And we don't say E, G, B, D, F and then the next line above it is E. It's not. So really what you have to understand is the pattern is simply the alphabet. From A to G, and it keeps going. This is what's going to help us to read above and below the staff. So take a second right now and make sure that you have memorized the lines and the spaces within the staff. So E, G, B, D, F. Every good band does fine, or every good band deserves fans. And remember the spaces, F, A, C, E. And make sure that you have that together, and then we'll move on. Great. So now you understand the pattern that you start to see when you combine what you already know about the lines from bottom to top, E, G, B, D, F, and the spaces from bottom to top, F, A, C, E. And you see that when combined, those give you a pattern, which is the alphabet going up. Now we're ready to move on and test our knowledge a little bit about both notes within the staff, meaning within the 5 lines, and those above and below. So let's test ourselves right now. Another treble clef, which tells us that we're reading the lines in the way that I've explained to you. What note is that? That's right, it's an E. You got it. How about this one? Nailed it again. That's a C. What about this one? It's the top line, so you're going to count up what you know in the pattern of the lines from bottom to top, which is E, G, B, D, F. That tells you that that note there is F. How about this one? count up using what you know about spaces, which is F-A-C-E from the bottom to the top. That's right, it's an A. Now we'll get a little trickier. So this is above what we already know. We know that the lines are E, G, B, D, F, but this note is above that. We know that the spaces are F, A, C, E, but this note is above that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the highest note that we do know. We know that this is an F on that top line. So the pattern just has us going up through the alphabet. So the note that's one higher than F has to be just the next letter of the alphabet, which is G. So that note right there is a G. One note above it, written on the line that is sort of an imaginary line that we write in like this. You write the note head and you put a line through it showing that we are talking about one line above our top line. That note is one higher than this G. And we know that going up through the alphabet we don't use H or above, so we're going to go back and start over again with our alphabet, which is A. So this is an A. Now let's take a look at notes that are below the staff. And the trick here is that you have to remember that just like when we have notes above the staff, we're going up through the alphabet. When you have notes that are below the staff, you're going to go backwards through the alphabet. So take a second right now and try and memorize your alphabet from G down to A backwards. G, F, E, D, C, B, A. G, F, E, D, C, B, A. Say that to yourself about 5 times. Go ahead and pause the video and say that, memorize it, and then press play again. Great. Now we're ready to look at some notes that are below the staff. Here's a note written on the space directly below the staff. So the lowest thing that we know is this bottom line. We know it's E. So if we go backwards through the alphabet, having memorized that the alphabet backwards from G to A is G, F, E, D, C, B, A, we know that this is one letter before E. So here's our E. Going back to the alphabet takes us to what? That's right, D. So we know that that is a D. If we go a line below that, again, this is an imaginary line that's below our 5 lines. We know that that has to be one lower than D that we know. So we go backwards through the alphabet, one more letter, which takes us to C. So that's a C. So, and it can keep going in that same fashion. If we're looking at a note that's written on the space below 2 lines below the staff, all we have to do is take the lowest thing that we have memorized, which is that bottom line E, and count backwards through the alphabet. So that's E, the space is D, the line is C, the space below that is B, the line below that is A, and then we know that we don't have nothing backwards from A except to start again at G. That note right there is G. Great. So now you can read both within the staff, above the staff, and below the staff in the treble clef. Okay, now it's test time. Let's see if you can figure out some of these notes on your own. I'm going to draw them up, and as quickly as you can, try to figure out what note they are. And in a few minutes, I'll give you the answers. See if you can name all of those notes. Press play when you're ready for the answers. Okay, here are the answers from the previous quiz. I'll just go through the answers for the notes that are outside of the staff, meaning above or below the 5 lines of the staff. This one is D, because we count down from the lowest thing that we know, which is bottom line E, backwards 1 through the alphabet. A is 2 above what the highest thing that we know, which is the top line F. So above that there's a space that is G, and then this note that is A. As we go up through the alphabet, and after we get to G, we turn around and start at A again. Same story with this D. We just count up from F, space above is G, line above is A, as like we know. Space above that is B, the line above is C, and this space is D. This one, very simple, G, 1 above the highest thing that we know, which is F, so we count up 1 in the alphabet, and that's G. Here's a C that is below the staff. We count down backwards to the alphabet from the lowest thing that we know, which is bottom line E. E, the space below is D, and that on the line is C. Here's the same A that we had up here, so I won't explain that again. But here, backwards to the alphabet from the lowest thing we know, which is bottom line E, D, C, B, A on that line. And this is just 1 higher than that, so it's B. So that's another good way to read music a little more quickly. Instead of always having to count in the same direction from a particular line that we know, you can also look at what came before it. So for example, reading from this F to this A, we can count up F, G, A. So if we know that this is F, we can easily find that this is A by just going up 2 in the alphabet. Similarly here, if we know that this is an A already, there's no reason to count down from bottom line E to find this B. This B is just 1 note higher than the A, so it has to be B. Take a second and make sure that makes sense to you. Great. For some of you, the whole preceding section was like page 1, question 1 in the book of easy questions. You got it. You understand it perfectly. Hopefully still you got something out of watching it, refreshing your memory, and doing the little assignment where I asked you to identify notes. Hopefully that was good practice. However, even a good understanding of what the notes are within the treble clef only gets us so far, because we need really to be able to read rhythms. So let's go over our basic rhythmic values. These are notes, and then I'll show you the rest versions, and then we'll start to put them together. The first type of note that you need to understand is the whole note. It looks like this. Just a simple circle. And for now, we'll ignore which line or space of the staff it is. I'm just writing it randomly, like as if this was a blank paper. So this is a whole note. This is a half note. Notice the only difference is just that I've added a stem to the empty note head. So these are the parts of the note. The note head, this is the note head, it's empty, and then this is a stem. The quarter note looks just like the half note, except I'm filling in the note head. So it has a filled in note head. The eighth note has a filled in note head, a stem, and a flag or tail. Moving on, I'm going to call them all flags. So this is the flag. The 16th note looks just like the 8th note, but we're adding a flag. And this is going to be true as we continue to subdivide and have a smaller and smaller note. value. So for example, we cut 16th and a half and we get 32nd notes, 64th notes, 128th notes, and so on. Although we really don't need to get too much more complicated than just this. 99.9% of the music that you're ever going to see has just these note values. 16th note has a flag. The 32nd note would have 3 flags. A 64th note would have 4 flags, and so on. The rest versions of these same notes, meaning when you wouldn't play, but for that same amount of time, they look like this. And in this case, it is important for just the whole and the half note where they're written on the staff. So the whole note, whole rest, looks like this. And it hangs from the D line, the 4th line up. The half note, I'm going to draw it down here on this set of 5 lines. And it sits on top of the B line. The way I remember that is that the whole note is, the whole rest, is like someone at the gym and they're doing a pull-up, so they're hanging from the line, whereas the half rest is sort of lazy and it's just sitting on the line. The quarter rest looks like this, a little fancy sideways M. The 8th rest, like a little fancy 7. And if we look at this part of the 7 as a flag or tail, the 16th just adds an extra one. A 32nd rest would have a 3rd one. A 64th would have 4. So, just remember that that's the half rest. Quarter rest, 8th rest, 16th rest. There's your whole rest. The number of beats that these are all equal to are as follows. A whole rest or a whole note are worth 4 beats. So if it's a whole note, you're going to be playing that note for 4 whole beats. If it's a whole rest, you're not going to be doing anything for 4 beats. The half rest is worth 2. And the half note is worth 2 beats. The quarter rest is worth 1 beat. Quarter note worth 1 beat. The 8th rest worth a half of a beat. An 8th note worth a half of a beat. The 16th note or rest worth 1/4 of a beat. Take a second, make sure that you understand everything that's written here, and then we'll go on. Great. Let's put some of these notes and rhythms into a context. So this is what they might really look like in a piece of music. So here's a half note worth 2 beats, 2 8th notes worth a half a beat each, a 8th rest worth a half a beat, an 8th note worth a half a beat, and there's a whole note. Notice that the whole note, because it's worth 4 beats, in 4/4 time is going to take up the entire bar. So there's a bar line here, and a bar line here, and that's all that can fit in that bar because it takes up all 4 beats. Here, the 4 beats of this measure, or bar, measure and bar are the same thing. Here, that same 4 beats is divided up between different notes and rests. So we have a half note, 2 8th notes, an 8th rest, another 8th note. And if we total up the number of beats that each of these note values has, we'll notice that it adds up to 4. It's a little math. 2 beats, this is a half a beat, and again a half a beat. If we add that up, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2, 4 beats. In 4/4 time, which is 95% of the music that we listen to, so I'm going to just stick in 4/4 time for right now. each bar is going to have to contain exactly 4 beats. So each bar or measure will have exactly 4 beats, regardless of what combination of notes and rests we use to get there. So let's build another 4/4 bar right now. And I'm just using random notes. So, here's another bar of 4/4 time. We have 2/8, a 16th rest, notice because it has 2 flags or tails, a 16th note, an 8th note, a quarter note, and another quarter note. In fact, just so that we have some more rests represented, let's just make this a quarter rest instead. The fancy sideways M. 2/8 are each worth a half a beat. The 16th is worth a quarter of a beat. Again, the 8th is worth half a beat. The quarter is worth 1 beat. And the quarter rest is also worth 1 beat. So that's a half a beat, so that's 1 beat. Plus a quarter of a beat, 1 1/4. Another quarter of a beat, so that's 1 1/2. This was a half, so that's 2 beats. There's beat 3. And beat 4, all represented within this 1 bar or measure in a mix of notes and rhythms. Notes and rests. Now that's all fine and good that we understand what the different note values and rest values mean, but it doesn't necessarily help us to play a rhythm or understand what a rhythm would sound like based on how it looks. So let's try and investigate this rhythm and figure out what it would really sound like in real time. Here we have 2 16th notes, an 8th rest, 2 more 8th notes, a quarter rest, a quarter note and a quarter rest. So if we add up those note values, we'll see that it equals 4 beats in the bar. But what does it sound like? Here's a foolproof method for getting the sound of it in your ears before you even need to play it on an instrument of your choice. Find the smallest note or rest value. So in this case, let's take a look and figure out what the smallest note or rest value is. That's right, it's the 16th notes. Those are the smallest things there. They're smaller than the 8th notes, they're smaller than the quarter note and the quarter rest. So what I'm going to do is draw 16 dots right underneath this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Let's pretend that all these dots are equally spaced apart and they represent a steady flow of 16th notes, as if I had just written 16 16th notes across the bar. Okay, and that's our steady time. Now all I'm going to do is circle a dot or more than 1 dot to indicate the value that's placed on a particular note. And if there are rests, I'm just going to leave the dots as they are. So the first 16th note gets 1 dot, so I'm circling that dot. The second, also worth 1/16, right? Our 8th rest is twice the size of a 16th note, so it is worth 2 16th notes. But it's a rest, I'm not playing anything, so I'm just going to leave it blank. These 2 dots get to stay as they are. This 8th and this 8th are both twice the size of 16th notes, so they're both worth 2 16th notes each. So I'll circle 2 16ths at a time for each of those. This quarter note, take a second and think about how many 16th notes are in a quarter note. That's right, there are 4. So I'm going to circle 4 dots. And this is a rest that is the exact same size as this quarter note. It's a quarter rest, so it is worth 4 dots, and I'm going to leave them all blank. So now, if I just click on the board here for each of these 16 clicks, I can start to see what the rhythm would sound like by just saying, using my voice to just say on, let's say on la, the syllable la, where I would be playing notes and where I wouldn't. So I'll go through the 16 notes one time for nothing, and then when we come back, I'll start saying la for the notes that we have circled. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. La, 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 la. I'll do it one more time. La, 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 la. Okay? That gives you an idea of what the rhythm actually sounds like. Then, using what we learned from the previous lesson on notes, we can figure out what note these all are. They happen to all be the same note, which is B. So if I were playing this on my instrument, for example, if I were playing this on the recorder, the B is the first fingering like this. All you're going to do is holding a recorder, have your thumb on the hole in the back, and your first finger covering the first hole. And my rhythm that I would play would be B, 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 just like that. Now the very last thing we'll do in this video is look at a little complicated rhythm, and that also includes different notes, as we learned before. So if you need to go back and review how to identify notes within the treble clef, go ahead and do that now, and you can just always come back to this part of the video when you're ready. Or if you need to review the part on reading rhythms and figuring out rhythms, just go back a little bit and check that out again. But I think you're probably ready to look at this line right here. I've identified the smallest note or rhythm, note or rest that's here, and it's the 16th note or the 16th rest. So I've drawn my 16 dots across the bottom representing every possible 16th in that bar. And now I'm going to circle them just like I did above for however many clicks each note value or rest value will be worth. So I have 2 16ths for that first 8th note, 2 16ths for the next 8th note. This quarter note is going to get 4 16ths. This is a single 16th. That's a rest, which is a 16th. I'm going to leave it blank. I have 2 more 16ths and a quarter note worth 4 16ths. So without worrying about the notes right now, the rhythm is da, 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 like that. Now if I look at the notes, using what I already know, we have E, G, A, B, G, D, and G again. And again, I just sort of chose some random notes, so this might sound cool, it might not really sound like much, but it is very similar to something that you'd see in a real piece of music. So now, what I could do to help me get ready to play this on my instrument, say if it was the recorder, or the saxophone, or the bass, or the guitar, or the piano, or whatever you want, I'm going to say the note names in the same rhythm as it appears. So again, I'll click 16 clicks for nothing, and then I'll start saying the note names in the proper rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. E, G, A, B, G, D, G. E, G, A, B, G, D, G. Now there are just a couple little details that I accidentally left out of the previous videos. And they may have brought up some questions for you as you were watching them. The first one is that you saw notes that looked like this. 2 note heads connected by a line. this isn't as complicated as it seems. It's not some new rhythm that you've never heard of. It's just a faster way of writing 2 eighth notes. So this is the same as this. Now if I have to write a bunch of eighth notes all in a row, it's a little bit easier if I just take the flags and fold them together like a bridge. And you can do this with any more than one. As soon as you have 2 eighth notes, you can draw them like this. Of course, you can draw them separately like this, but it's just going to take more time. So you could have this, there could be 2 of them barred together, 3, 4, however many you want, all barred together. Okay? Now, what if they're 16th notes? And they have more than one flag or tail. All I'm going to do is just connect that other set as well. Let me draw that line a little bit thicker so you can see it. So I've taken both sets of flags and tails and connected them like a little bridge, and that's what you get. So maybe that clears up what you saw in the previous videos. And then one thing that's not covered in the previous videos, well, 2 things actually. One is the dotted note. Now, a quarter note is worth 1 beat, and an eighth note is worth a half a beat. So if I want to have the sound of a beat and a half, I could write these 2 notes and put what's called a tie between them, meaning that I'm just going to start the note here and it's going to continue all the way through this same value. So this isn't 2 separate notes, this is 1 note that's worth a beat and a half. 1 beat plus a half of a beat. However, there's another even quicker way to write the same thing, and that's to write a dotted quarter note. Like that, as if it has a little mole. Now a dotted note simply means that note value plus a half of that note value. If you're good at math, you're going to like this way of expressing it. X with a dot equals X times, X plus a half X. I'm not that great at math, but there it is. X plus a half X. So if X was a whole note worth 4 beats, then X plus, or X dot would equal X plus a half X. So 4 dotted equals 4 plus a half of 4, which is what? 2. 4 dot equals 6. So 6 beats. A dotted whole note is worth 6 beats. And there's what a dotted whole note would look like. Okay? So this is just a quicker way of writing this. This is also totally correct, but a dotted note is a quicker way to write it. And you should just know what it means when you see it. So a dotted eighth note is worth 3/4 of a beat. It's worth an eighth note plus the value of half of an eighth note, which is a 16th note. So a eighth plus a 16th equals 3/4 of a beat. Okay. I guess that's about it. Oh, there's one more thing: flats and sharps. If you go to any piano, you'll see that there are white keys and black keys. The black keys represent flats and sharps, which are really the same thing. A flat note is just one of its names. That can just as easily be called a sharp note. So, for example, between G and A on the piano is a black key. Its names are G sharp or A flat. You can call it either one of those names. They are the same note. They sound the same. G sharp is equal to A flat. Same thing. These are the symbols for those values. Sharp or flat. So the sharp is like our, what old folks would know as the pound sign or the number sign that young folks know as hashtag. And the flat sign is just like a little B, or a little fancy sideways B. Okay? So you should know what those are in case you see them attached to notes. What you should remember is that even though I say G sharp, A flat, when they're written in musical notation, I want to write them before the note, because we read musical notation left to right, same way we do when we read a book. So when we get to the G sharp, we don't want to have already played a G and then find out that it was sharp as we read to the right. So we write the sharp to the left of the note. Okay, so before the note would appear in our mind, we already know it's sharp something, it's sharp G, here we go. And you play G sharp. Okay, so you say G sharp, you write on music notation sharp G. Same thing would go for flats. So this flat sign would come before the A note head. Okay, that's about it. That pretty much covers everything. So if you have any other questions, feel free to email me or ask me at school. Or if you're not at my school, you're not in my class, then you can email me at tonypeebles@gmail.com. Okay? Don't be shy. Feel free to email any question. No question is too silly. This stuff can be a little bit tricky to understand and start to put into practice, but once you do, it opens up a whole world of music to you, and you'll be so much more self-sufficient as a student of music, as an appreciator of music, and possibly as a composer of music. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Again, you can email me at tonypeebles@gmail.com.